Hello everyone and welcome to Heart Yoga Radio. We're having our usual stroll through the hills today. We might be mobbed with sheep shortly. We've just seen 4 or 5 sheepdogs and their handlers, the shepherds, marching over the fields in front of us. They've disappeared now, so we just hope that they haven't herded them onto the track that we're actually walking down at the moment. Anyway, enough sheep talk. And on with the subject of today. So we thought we'd have another little crack at Lao Tzu. And we have chapter 58. So, do you want to read that out, Pete? And then we'll have a little chat about this one. Will.
Now that we've given the agricultural report, I suppose we'll give the meteorological report. It's kind of hazy sun and it's nice.
Yeah.
It's very nice light.
It's quite nice because it hasn't rained for a couple of days, so it's actually passable up here right now.
Anyway, to the matter in hand, Lao Tzu, chapter 58. If you govern with a generous hand, then your people will be good people. But if your system is too constricting, then your people will outwit you. Good fortune, we say, can come from disaster. And the reverse is true as well. Who knows where all this will lead? Honesty can flip into deceit in a moment. People trying to be good can fall into the dark, and it can take them years to get out of it. So the sage is like a razor, but he doesn't cut. He is straight as a die, but not pointedly so. He is bright, but not blindingly so.
So I suppose the first few lines are quite straightforward. We've got, if you govern with a generous hand, then your people will be good people. Well, because they'll be happier, won't they? They won't be shivering in their homes, unable to heat or eat.
Yeah.
Which really pisses people off, actually. And I do hope that somebody from the government's listening to this. But if your system is too constricting, then the people will outwit you, and you can feel you can hear the sound of the guillotine sort of being wheeled out.
The tumbril.
Yeah.
The tumbril heading in your direction.
So that's kind of quite self-explanatory in the beginning there, but it gets a little bit mysterious from then on in, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. It's quite cryptic. This it's Lao Tzu. He likes to work through riddles and mysteries and contradictions and tensions and so forth. That's his method. Tell Lao Tzu, if he was here, you'd say, well, what's your method? What method do you employ to get people to find some sort of beatitude in their lives? And he would say, confusion is my method. Confusion. And
gonna mess with their mind.
That's right, yeah, contradiction, paradox and so forth. But as you say, it starts off fairly straightforwardly. Really this chapter is again falling into one of the few sort of basic themes that he repeats over and over again. He's kind of grinding away on 4 or 5 themes, isn't he? This is the theme of politics, governance, particularly the problem of governance. What kind of a thing is a government? What kind of a thing should a government be, if it should be at all? These are sort of basic questions of political philosophy being asked forever. Neolithic people were asking these questions. And Lao Tzu is a part of a very, very long and venerable tradition of political questioning. What is a government? What does it do? And Lao Tzu addresses the problem through the figure of the sage, and the sage either would be a sage king, a bit like Plato's philosopher kings, even though they were quite fascistic, his lot, a sage king, or a sage who advises a ruler. You have the emperor who inherits his title. He might not have much of a clue as to what to do, so he asks his first minister, who's purported to be a sage, and the sage is somebody who's got some kind of a clue as to what's going on. So this is the theme again and again and again, So you have the character of the sage, what the sage does, whether the sage is an actual kind of philosopher king or sage king, or whether the sage is an advisor to some kind of ruler or council of rulers or parliament or whatever. And this figure is throughout the Lao Tzu occurring again and again. So he's doing this advice to rulers thing, or saying how the sage ought to be if it's going to successfully advise rulers. And the sage is, actually this is in quotes on the thing, the sage is saying to the ruler, if you govern with a generous hand, then your people will be good people. But if your system is too constricting, then the people will outwit you. And if you've got a system, which in fact, like I'll say, a welfare system like we have in this country at the moment, which is just punitive on the people who have to make use of it, because they fell onto hard times. Or the economies fell onto hard times and through no fault of their own, they're kind of struggling to survive. And then if they're then faced with a system that's not generous, but it's actually mean-spirited, punitive, and which treats those people as an internal other, as ready-made scapegoats with which to divide and rule the population in order to play power politics and to retain power, then people will try to outwit you, and of course this is what they will do, I mean, they'll fiddle the meter and they'll fiddle the benefit, not to be criminal, not for the joy of criminality or anything like that, but because they have to or die. If people are desperate, they will shoplift. Decent people, decent middle class people thrown into destitution will shoplift, will steal.
Well, even
will prostitute,
decent working class people
will prostitute their bodies, and all the rest of it. It's people who sort of feel of themselves, their self-image is that they are decent people.
Perhaps they've never done anything like that before.
They don't do criminal, but enough desperation breeds antisocial action. I mean, Lao Tzu is just dead right about that, because you are going to survive,
Yeah, especially also if you've got children who need to survive as well.
Yeah.
You're going to do what it takes, aren't you?
You'll do what it takes.
Yeah.
You'll do what it takes. And of course, so he's pointing that out. So he's saying to rulers, just be generous with the population, Be actually generous. Realise that your job as a governing person, or as a governor, a king, a sage, an emperor, a member of a governing panel or whatever, a council, or the member of a governing council or something of that type. That your job is to look after people. It's not to manipulate them to retain your power. And I wish our politicians would take some notice of this.
Yeah.
And he's right.
Yeah, because it's not going to end well. Politicians who are just
shitty.
Yeah, just there for the power and to just basically steal as much money from the poor as possible. Lot, right?
Or to preserve an exploitative system.
It's not going to end well for them, because you can't do that indefinitely. There is only so far you can grind people down.
There is.
Before they, what he says there, they outwit you.
They will
outwit you. Either a huge crime wave or they kind of rise up against you.
Yeah, social unrest. And it's very apposite, isn't it? We're kind of on the cusp of a moment like that. There are great calls on our government at this time to be generous rather than mean-spirited.
Yeah.
And they're kind of not able to do it. Their philosophy doesn't enable them to do it. Anyway, let's press on. Good fortune, we say, can come from disaster. And the reverse is true as well. Oh, we know this. This is the old Chang Tzu story, which we tell on frequent occasions. The maybe story. The farmer's son, because he breaks his leg breaking in a horse, doesn't get conscripted into the army and killed in the war. All the neighbours' sons do. So the son's misfortune of breaking his leg actually saves him from dying in a war. So, this is a devilish thing. You do not know the ultimate outcomes of actions or events. They don't actually cash in all of their chips until the end of time, do they?
Yeah.
And that's why he says, who knows where all this will lead? Who knows where all this will lead? I mean, and this is a call for modesty on the part of predictors of the future. Something, incidentally, I noticed David Graeber doing, and I read his stuff, He says, well, actually, we can't predict this stuff. And our efforts to predict futures are generally a bit wide of the mark. If you're going to watch 50s science fiction, and they say by the year 2000 we'll have flying cars and all that kind of stuff. Obviously some of this stuff's just kind of for fun, but at the same time, prediction and appraising the exact sort of good fortune, bad fortune index of any event is just really, really difficult. As I say, things don't cash out till the end of time. Similarly, this is in the line of the existentialist idea for human life, is that the essence of the life is realised only at the very end. Existence precedes essence. Whereas with a table or a chair, essence precedes existence. The object has the essence of a chair and therefore is a chair. Whereas the human being doesn't have the essence of a human being and is therefore a human being. Human beings in an ongoing process of living, which culminates at death. And it's only at that point that we know what our essence is, which is kind of because we're creating our essence from moment to moment. And the existentialist formula is existence precedes essence. We exist and then we establish our essence, and it culminates at the end. At the end of life. So, and like Lao Tzu's making a very similar point, and in some sense it's the same point vis-a-vis societies. We have to be a little bit careful with prediction, I'd say, and I think he's right about that. Good advice to the ruler from the sage there. But of course you do. You need to keep statistics. You need to keep figures. You need to know what's happening at the same time to give yourself a bit of a chance. Get a headwind. That's what that's about. It's sort of practical stuff. And then he goes on, honesty can flip to deceit in a moment. People trying to be good can fall into the dark, and it can take them years to get out of it. And I think this is very interesting. I think it's kind of slightly bleak view, and I don't think he always consistently takes that view. But yeah, people can flip. And this was Anna Arendt's point when she went to Israel to report on the trials of Adolf Eichmann, the bureaucrat who organised and managed the Holocaust. And she reported on his trial for, I think it might have been the New York Times or something. And and the question was on everybody's mind: how did these ordinary, good, decent Germans become concentration camp guards? And they'd say I was just doing my job. Eichmann actually said that I was just doing my job. The ultimate fascist excuse, just doing my job. And she sort of comments on this, the absolutely ordinariness of him. She said, I couldn't get out. He was just like he was like a guy from the back office at the tax, It's remarkable the way she reports it, It's just this guy standing there, just like a clerk, just doing my job. She called it the banality of evil.
Yeah.
And that is a really horrible and dark thing to realise about our humanity, Because those people were so ordinary, and we expected monsters. Expect them to have horns, And just the frailty of it, the frailty of decency when you get it, and it can flip. And he's right, but it's very bleak. But he's right, this. People trying to be good can fall into the dark, and it can take them years to get out of it. And this makes me think, our current situation again. Obviously, I keep referring this to now. It's the cosmic right. Well-meaning hippies who believe a load of completely flimsy nonsense. Space cadets. They're channeling Metatron when they play the Tibetan bowl between the legs or what, I don't know. The kind of real flaky fucking shit, I don't know, people think they can cure cancer by muttering a spell or something, But mostly harmless, and people who want to be good, people will talk about compassion and wisdom and sagacity and you know, our connectedness to each other, and they'll give you all this fucking spiel. But the money that the Kochs threw at targeting these people to get them behind anti-vax and anti-lockdown and anything that would actually divide and rule. And we know that coke money, oil money, big oil money, has found its way into this thing, and that those people are duped, and they think they're being right on. They think they're in the vanguard of a fucking revolution. And
in fact, they're just like working for evil.
They're working for evil.
Yeah.
They just drop straight into it.
Yeah.
Says you can fall into the darkness, and it'll take them years to get out. And I think a lot of these it'll take them years to get, because they double down. They're doubling down.
Yeah.
A lot of them. And I think, see, Lao Tzu, they spotted it then. So it's flimsy, and it's a bit terrifying. It seems like some of his advice to rulers is do not create the conditions that enable this sort of situation. Don't enable it by building up resentment in society, by treating people cruelly, in order to, you know, to avail yourself of a scapegoat of the poor or whatever, you know, in order to do your power politics. This is fucking depraved.
Yeah, depraved is definitely the word for it.
So he then goes on, he says the sage is like a razor, but he doesn't cut. He is straight as a die, but not pointedly so. He is bright, but not blindingly so. I mean, again, this is sound advice to the would-be sage, you know, or explaining the sage to a ruler or to a parliamentary panel or whatever, you know. He's like a razor. Well, that means he just knows lots of stuff because he's very observant, you know. Taoist sagacity, or the notion of the Taoist sage, is someone who's extremely alert to nature, you know, or kind of put it, extremely alert to what's going on around them, you know. And the development of Taoist science over millennia, and the Taoist arts, particularly the brush painting and so forth, all indicates this very fact. And this is somebody, you know, with self-knowledge, because the inward of meditation isn't lost on Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu counsels going very, very deep inside in meditation. But at the same time having this alertness to the processes of life and existence and nature and the cosmos and the earth, all going on around you, having a very acute awareness. That is what the razor references to. It's just how knowledgeable the guy is, you know, and therefore how useful that is to rulers. But he doesn't make a display of it because it's going to be counterproductive. There really is just a simple home truth here, you know. Nobody likes a clever dick, you know, in a sense. So he has to sort of play it down, you know. It's like a quiet, modest, tending to go less rather than go more, where most of us would think, well, intensify, go more, double down. Let's say would retreat and step back and go quieter, be more modest, more you know, just more gentle and subtle in its presentation. And again, that's just a piece of practical wisdom, I would say that.
If only our lot would listen to Lao Tzu.
Yeah.
What a nice place it would be living here if
it is a nice place.
They read all of that and like pondered it for a bit. I thought, yeah, well, let's do that. All right. Well, I hope everyone found that interesting. Hopefully useful, something to ponder on. Anyway, we're making our way down the hill now, so we will get on with our walk and we'll speak to you again soon.
Make knowledge great again.